Hello, everyone. Wow. Can I say it's been a while? I think it's been a while. It's been quite a long while. Like, it feels like I just got off like a really fucked up roller coaster, but in a good way. You know, I've really missed talking to you guys. I really can't express just how much I've missed the discussions, the comments, the video requests. Every single one of them has, you know, it, it's allowed it's allowed me to grow in a way that I want to grow, or I would hope in a way that we want to grow. I started this channel in like August, and I had no idea where it was gonna go, what I was gonna do with it, you know. But the more I talk about the things that I talk about, and the more I continue to interact in the world, it actually gives me a really great sense of security, in that the things that what we bring up, the things that we talk about, they're not only true, they are painfully true. They are incredibly painfully true. In this past month, I can say I've probably socialized more than I have in the previous decade, because I really don't get out much. But I guess that's just my default, I don't get. I like to learn things. Wherever I am, if I can learn something new, something interesting, doesn't matter. Even if it's in a social setting, I'll go. I'll enjoy it. But we know most social interactions these days are they're so contrived. They're just so. It's not even made up. It's like we know that we're all coping, right? We're all just fucking coping here. And it's something that once I accepted it, I look at so many things differently. And, even as much as you can look at somebody and say that, this person's an asshole, or this person did this person did that. Even go as far as to call them a psychopath or a narcissist or a sociopath. Every single one of them, of us, is just living by their coping mechanism. And, the things that I've seen, like, they are still so fresh in my mind. And I'm going to continue talking about them. Because I don't know if it's not evident enough that I really, really dislike hookup culture. And, over the years, I've had some friends who are like, the definition of like players. Like, you'll go to like a club or a social function or something, they'll lay eyes on a girl, the girl will lay eyes on them, and it's like done. It's done, And, I still have friends like that right now. And it's shown me so much about, modern dating standards are such bullshit. All this online discourse about, men need to step up their game, or like, women's standards are raising. They're fucking not. They're not. They're really not. Like, it got to a point where I was just asking, like, do these people know what their daughters are doing outside here? Do they have any idea? Like, even a single clue? Oh my God. And the obvious thing about hookup culture is, the culture of abortion, really, or uh, how would I put it? Because hookup culture it's incredibly, it's deviously natalist. You'd think it's just like, oh, have all the sex you want, be empowered, whatever, have fun and everything. And yet so many of these people still want to pretend to settle down, and on top of that, have children. And not only have children, but expect these children not to engage in the same kinds of activities that they engaged in when they were their age. And these days, I'd say I'm more and more vocal about you know um, what I believe about having children, or having children myself, or the idea of continuing to have children right now. I'm a lot more vocal with it, and to see the responses that people give back, it's quite enlightening, honestly. They deal with so much cognitive dissonance about their own decision making, and you can see um how it drips into, you know when they have children. The cognitive dissonance starts even before that child lays foot on the ground. And I'm seeing it so much more, especially like as I get old, as people in our age group get older. It's like me and the few friends I have, it's basically like we live in the same household with the kind of bullshit that it's literally bullshit. Parents just say a lot of shit just to cloud up the air, right? They don't actually say anything to make sense. They just say it just because just not even because they can say it. Like, I really honestly have to wonder, what the fuck did they think was going to happen by bringing other human beings into this environment, and expecting them not to interact with it as they saw fit? I'm so unfazed and unrepentant about telling my parents I'm never going to have children. I don't care how much it fucking hurts them. Because I can tell them for a fact, and you know, to anyone else, to any other antinatalists, who you'd obviously agree that this is such a bullshit cycle. Why would you want to repeat it? Why would you want to repeat this on somebody that you are responsible for bringing here, right? Especially at the level that we know, let me not say the level, right? Once you've come to the conclusion that childbirth childbirth keeps this torture going, you'd have to enter some level of some like insane level of cognitive dissonance to be like, actually, I was wrong. Having children is great. And yet, you know, I'm looking at all these people, all these people in these occasions that are supposed to be, where let me not say society told us, but like generally society portrays these places as places where, you enjoy your youth and everything, but it's a very temporary escape mechanism. Like, it might be a good one while you're doing it, but it doesn't last very long. And the older you get, The older you get, the older people get, the more warped their understanding even of marriage itself is. Because somewhere along the line, people began to perceive of marriage as some sort of like novelty, some sort of accomplishment to tick off, right? Some sort of life accomplishment milestone. And it's really marriage is fucking terrible. Like if you're really married to some other person, another person, like you're really committed to this person for the rest of your life, that's not gonna be fucking rainbows and roses every day. It's actually going to be quite fucking like horrible. Because you'll start knowing that person who they really are. They'll start knowing you for who you really are, and then you'll start knowing the people around you for who they really are. And that's why, as much as I'm against childbirth, I'm not against marriage. I'm not against relationships. I'm not against people like, being in love or be like just being with one another romantically, whatever the case. Even as much as we can say, it's all a lie and blah, 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 all the black pill shit you want, right? Fine. We're all coping, right? We've come to that conclusion. Can we at least find some healthy coping mechanisms? Coping mechanisms that don't negatively affect other people around you as well, right? Because if your coping mechanism is getting into fights with other people, like your coping mechanism could be drugs. And I'm definitely gonna make a video on this. I'm definitely like I really hope I get the time to be able to make these videos the way I want to, because there's just so much I want to cover. And there's so much I like it's mostly just the discussions I've missed from talking about the topics that I do, because everybody always has a different insight into what they think is going on, right? Even if we all agree similar things are going on, maybe there's something I'm not seeing, or we're looking at the same thing, but somebody else sees something completely different. And one reason I hate the hookup culture so much is just because of how it's incredibly impersonal, right? And this is my perspective. This is my preferences, right? Maybe some people they get off on that and they enjoy it, and like like genuinely enjoy it, and it doesn't like disrupt their lives or their emotions, whatever. Fine, right? Whatever the case. I'm talking me personally. And on top of that, I think I said I studied public health in uni. So I'm just constantly aware about what's the next big health fucking scandal, or the next big health I don't know, you name it. STDs are on the rise, like rapidly. Rapidly. And when these STDs hop from one person to another to another to another, they're constantly mutating. They're constantly getting better at being STDs, right? To the point where medication, like they become chronic, which means you're just constantly taking medication for them. And this isn't just herpes. Like so many people have herpes, just like, well, not like that, but like the contraction rate is it's quite common, like there's billions of people. I think there is billions of people with herpes. I think I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on this, right? This should probably be a disclaimer. Don't quote me on anything that sounds factual. Don't believe anything I say unless you want to believe it, okay? From this point on, thank you, right? And it's not just STDs. Oh man, I'm gonna sound like a fucking spiritual guru right now. I don't care. But when people have sex, at least like from my experience, you're not just fucking the other person. You're like merging with them. You're sharing energy with one another. Let me say that. You're sharing energy with one another in such an intimate way. And to be able to just shut that off, do it to the next person the next day, the next day, the next day, the next day, it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't just fade into the darkness. It keeps adding up. You'll find that the trauma that you experience isn't even your own. The mental issues, the mental problems you experience aren't even your own. Somebody else transferred them to you and you don't even realize it. I've stopped seeing things in terms of like people, individuals, whatever. Everything has some energy to it, some level of energy to it, right? If everything's atoms and atoms are like electrons and neutrons and shit, you could slide in some what is it called? Is it astronomy? Micro, I haven't been in school in a long time, clearly. Right? Whatever realm atoms are in, that, right? I believe everything has its type of energy, right? And then there's human beings. And there's people who have really good energy, there's people who have terrible energy. And to me, it's just so, when you see how somebody's problems start or how they continue, and yet they themselves are somewhat aware of it and they continue to do it, I think they're just pointing it out for attention. They're not pointing it out for you to suggest to them, how to maybe avoid it or improve on it, whatever. And you see these people's faces, and as much as they could even have come down from like having sex the whole night, and they still look like strangers. And that just, it will never not be weird to me. It won't. Like I don't really treat sex like this holy grail of like human experience or whatever. But at the same time, if we're here, just enjoy your fucking self, Enjoy yourself, do your best not to harm other people. But really enjoy yourself, because there's really not much you can build on here. And I mean enjoy yourself. I don't mean just like getting into like, maybe you enjoy yourself by forgetting. That's fine, right? One thing about how I've learned or what I've learned from this channel is when and where to criticize, and what needs to be criticized. Maybe something doesn't need to be criticized. Maybe it just is what it is, And I feel like a lot of us have a hard time accepting that, especially when you're trying to explain to somebody like bringing kids into this world the way it is incredibly torturous. I look at these young children right now and I pity them so much. Because if you haven't noticed, it's still the millennial generation taking shit for what the boomers failed at and the Gen Xers failed at. We're supposed to. We were born in a burning fucking building. And it's us who are taking the blame for not putting the fire out. Nobody asked to be born during the fucking Reagan era or or during the Gulf War, during the number of recessions that happened, right? We didn't fuck this economy. You old fucks did. And it's crazy how they expect us. No. They expect us to push this on to the next generation. And they bitch and moan and complain about how we're not having children. And this is where I see antinatalism it really hasn't capitalized yet. And I think they've pointed this out before, that it's happening on its own. We are slowly entering an involuntary antinatalist era. Or not slowly, we have been for the past 40, 50, maybe even 60 years, right? In a lot of countries. But like in most of the world now, it's actually becoming increasingly antinatalist, involuntarily, right? And it's not even through coercion, right? A drop in birth rates, unless it was like deliberately done by like a government or like in terms of persecution, a drop in birth rates is the greatest. It's the greatest avenue that antinatalism has to survive, to continue. Because really, who gets harmed when the birth rates drop? The unborn don't, right? The people who are not having those kids don't get harmed. So what's the problem? And this is all due to how fucked the economy continues to become. It's still under the control of natalists, but they're just so fucking greedy that they're kneecapping themselves. And one thing I've learned is never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. And we can see, I've seen this in hanging out with my friends and actually like interacting with their families and seeing that so much of our issues are just the exact fucking same. It is our parents' generation that are going to suffer the fucking most for their indecision, for their indecisiveness, for their lack of accountability, really. You're going to blame a child for turning out a certain way as if they've put the gun to your head and told you, give birth to me. I want to turn out this way, right? It got to a point where I realized if I just kept being obedient and just listening to my parents and doing what they said, I'd be left socially fucking crippled. I've had to undo so much of it because I just realized, what the fuck? Why am I pleasing you? It's my fucking life. What the hell are you going to do for me now except just wait for me to fucking jizz into a fucking woman and bring you a grandchild so you can be like, oh, wow, so cute. And then I have to be the one to explain to them why I brought them here when they start experiencing their traumas. It never fucking ceases to amaze me. If I could broadcast this message and just tell it to, our parents' generation, I would want them to feel pathetic. I would want them to feel depressed. I would want them to actually listen to the fucking shit that they're telling us. And I'd want it to stick in their minds. Because so many people are literally hanging on by a fucking thread. And I didn't know how bad it was. So many people, you can see it so evidently. I normally just stare people directly in the eyes because I want to make sure that I'm talking to another person who, is there, if that makes sense. And I just look at people and I'm like, this person's dying inside. And it's like so many people, like they're practically zombies. They're zombies, and yet they're like they are live zombies that can reproduce, you know? And yet still parents believe that it's the problems outside. That's what's corrupting the children right now. I'm glad I didn't grow up with TikTok. I'll say that much. The call is coming from inside the house. If there's one thing I could broadcast to this previous generation and the previous generation of parents, the call is coming from inside the fucking house. And we're done picking up the fucking call. As much as I can criticize, the PC SJW nature of the generation that we're living in, and even the Gen Zs. One thing about these generations is they're not afraid to say that something isn't okay. They're not afraid to punch back. They're not. They don't bootlick. You might say we're fucking lost in our consumerism and social media and you name it. But swallowing wholesale narratives like the previous generation is incredibly difficult unless, of course, they're just tailored to us, right? So, that was I guess a short recap of me just collecting my thoughts and ideas, because I feel like the best teacher for me has been simply to experience these things. To simply just be there, not even interacting, but just to be there and observe. It really gave me a sense of assurance that you are actually doing the right thing. The more you learn to see the child in somebody, the more you realize just how torturous of an existence this is. So I really, really hope I'll have time to make more videos. And, I hope you guys continue to comment. Even, no matter what video it's on, you just comment. I see all the comments. I do. I always read as many comments as I can, reply to as many as I can. So, let's hope my schedule comes back to me.